All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to our coverage, our playthrough of Dr. Dave Regis's book, Chess Tactics in the Openings, his recommended repertoire for players. And we've seen so far all kinds of things stemming from E4. I'm not going to keep going through the list, have a look at the playlist, but we've got a few things to go. We've still got to look at the Perk Modern, which is there. We'll get to that. We've still got to look at the French defense. That will be the one we get to last. And we've got to do Alekhine's defense, which is this. And the first comment on pronunciation, I've heard this name pronounced in about 10 million different ways. Alekhine, 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 whatever. I'm just going to call him Alekhine because whatever, let's keep it simple. And, you know, I don't speak Russian. So yeah, we'll go with Alekhine. And the idea of the Alekhine defense, okay, is you provoke white into pushing pawns forward to chase the knight. And the idea of black is that the pawns will be too far forward and they'll be vulnerable to counterattack and the wall of pawns will crumble. So normally white will play e5, and this seems to be what Dr. Dave's recommending here, followed by knight to d5. I'm just going to amuse myself for a second by putting on the lines. I played this a few times as a young player, and I used to play the Brooklyn variation, which is this. And I just put the knight back. I made it look as though black hadn't moved. And it's actually surprisingly tricky. It's not rubbish. You might think it's complete rubbish. The computer obviously doesn't like it because the computer just thinks, look at white has got loads of space and an extra move, which they have. But it's actually quite an amusing opening. Just to put it back and it just looks like white's cheated and played two moves, and it's actually white's go in this position as well, so they get to play three moves, so they're probably going to play d4, and you know, black hasn't started, but it's surprisingly not that awful. But anyway, that's not what we're going to be looking at here. We're going to assume that black is unlike me, is sane and plays here. And then there's the two most common moves are the immediate pawn attack, knight b6, d4 and d6, or d4, d6, oh no, not d5, that's impossible, d6, then c4, then the knight here. It leads to the same position anyway. But most of the games that Dr. Dave, he's got 8 games, so we'll do 2 videos of 4. Most of the time, it looks like white's playing d4 as the third move. So let's turn the lines off, put on d4, and look at our first game, which is from the Oberliga in Germany, 2002. And we have Grabarczyk and Dana. Okay, fair enough. And I'm really just going to run through the first 14 moves because there's nothing much to say about them. It's the surprising quickness of the end on move 14 that we really want to look at in this. So d6 from black, and this is the point. Black will try to do things to disrupt this pawn center. c4 from white, knight to b6, takes. In this game, capturing this pawn, and the bishop comes out this way. In the next game, I think we'll look at the different pawn capture in this position. Knight to c3, bishop to e7, bishop to d3, knight to c6, knight g to e2, bishop to f6, bishop to e3, and bishop to g4, which is interesting. Pinning the knight, not surprisingly f3. Bishop h4 check is played, which looks like you're walking into g3, but g3 actually doesn't really work, presumably because you have bishop takes pawn. Yeah, I'm just monitoring the bar to make sure I'm not going insane, and that's fine. But in any case, white blocks the check with knight to g3, and now this bishop can run away. So bishop h5. You can't play knight takes bishop, of course, because the knight is currently still blocking the check. So castles, the knight is now no longer blocking the check, so the bishop has to escape this attack. Bishop to e2. White not interested in the trade of bishops. Let's just explain. So I presume that after this, a move here and then this move here, white is more than a bit nervous about this rook pointing at his king. So anyway, so bishop to e2 is played. Castles from black. And now d5 from white. And the position, according to the computer, is what you'd expect from an opening. Tiny advantage to white. And yet, after black's very natural next move to escape this attack on the knight, watch the bar. Oh, and suddenly we're +2. Oh dear, the lights just flickered again. A horrible feeling. Anyway, so we're now looking at +2. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? So what on earth is going on here? If you want to work out the correct next couple of moves, then feel free to press pause and have a go. Otherwise, I will carry on in 3, 2, and 1. And the best move here is bishop takes knight, surprisingly enough, because after pawn takes, this knight is now beginning to run out of squares. So f4 is played. And where's the knight going to go? This is no good, 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 and this is occupied, and this is occupied. So the knight has to go to d7. But now, here, and this pawn is protected by the rook. The knight doesn't matter so much because you could play bishop takes knight, but it's protected by the rook. And where's the bishop going to go? Well, if it goes here, you just lose your bishop anyway. So in this position, resignation from black. Actually, after this move, black resigns. Black doesn't take it as far as here because they're just going to be down a full pawn, a full piece. And in a high level of chess, of course, that's no good. Okay, let's get to our second game. We're in Le Touquet in France this time. And the resignations after 13 moves, we've got Vos against Garret. So e4, knight f6, e5, knight d5. Oh, d4, I think there is a game where c4 is played first later on in the book, but I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. d6 from black, c4, knight to b6, and it doesn't make any difference because you end up with exactly the same position. Pawn takes, c takes this time. So instead of going with the e pawn, this game black has taken with the d pawn, c pawn, sorry. Knight to c3, the lights really do keep flickering here. I know it's nearly Halloween as I record this, but I could do without being plunged into darkness. Bishop f5, bishop to e3, knight to c6, knight to f3, and d5. Now d5 is given a question mark by Dr. Dave, and he says white can win a pawn now. Absolutely, which is probably why it's +2. But black made it worse. So white actually chooses to play c5. And knight c8 from black. You've got to put the knight somewhere. But yeah, it really ought to just go to here and let white play knight takes d5. And then it's advantage white. But black tries to cling on to this pawn. And if the knight's here, it cuts off the defense of the queen, you see. So black plays knight to c8, hoping to keep things defended. Queen b3 from white, so a second piece attacking here, and the queen is now attacking b7, and all of a sudden out of nowhere black is in some trouble. As you can see, is that at least +3? I'm going to say +3, it basically is. In the actual game we get e6, queen takes b7, knight 8 to e7, knight to b5, so now we've got eyes on these two squares, and it's all terribly, terribly horrible here and here. Yeah, ouch. What we can do is go back a few moves. And in this position here, after knight f3, of course, if black plays sensible moves, the position is exactly what you'd expect, slight advantage to white. So what's the computer recommending? Computer's recommending e5, actually, which is interesting. Similarly, after bishop to e3 in this position, sensible moves, e6 or g6, fine. So, okay, two nice wins for white, but I always like to point out that, you know, if black doesn't make these blunders, then these openings are playable. Okay, two more to go. Lights just went again. I'm going to leave this in. I'm not going to re-record this. It's quite amusing. So I hope I don't lose the internet as a problem. Right, okay, so we haven't got player names for this one. We've just got an all-out miniature, and Dr. Dave says, actually doesn't say anything. That comment only makes sense if I play through the game. So, okay, e4, knight f6, e5, knight d5, d4. There is a game that c4 is played, I promise, but it's going to be the first one on the next video by the looks of it. D6, C4 now, knight to B6, pawn takes pawn, C pawn takes pawn, knight to C3, and oops, turn the lines off. And this time bishop F5 from black. Which isn't awful, is it? With the computer +1, +6, +8, +0.8, I should say +0.6, blah, blah, blah. So slight advantage white, nothing that you wouldn't expect. And Queen F3, which is kind of cool. One of the problems with putting the bishop here is it A, it's undefended, and B, it's now no longer defending B7. So Queen F3 kind of forces Queen D7, which defends both pieces. Fine. And at this point, it's where Dr. Dave has written something, and it says, I'm sure you can see that black would be embarrassed if the bishop on F1 landed on B5, because there'd be a problem here. There'd be a rather nasty, oh, no, that's cheating. There'd be a rather nasty pin. So maybe that gives you an idea as to white's next move, white's best move here, which is why it's now +3. And if you want to have a little go, what would you play here as white? Feel free to press pause. But in a few seconds, I will put the lines up and show you the best move. So 3, 2, 1, and the move is C5. And why is C5 thoroughly unpleasant? Well, you've got the knight attack, so you've got to do something. And in our game, although the best move is just to put the other knight here and accept you're losing a piece, in the actual game, black played takes, and now we get this move bishop to here. Ouch, looks unpleasant, but surely black can just put the knight in the way. Well, yes, but no, because now we're winning the piece anyway. What do we do with a pinned piece? We attack it again. And the best that black can do really is just take and probably queen takes. Yeah, queen takes, queen takes. Knight takes, and you're in a bit of a pickle, really, aren't you? I guess you probably castle, but what have you got? You've lost a whole knight for 2 pawns. So good news for white that they're going to be a knight for 2 pawns up. All right, one more, which probably just as well, given that they say the lights keep flickering. Goodness knows what that's all about. Yeah, could definitely do without a power cut. But at least it's not cold, so I'm not going to freeze if that happens. So 4th and final game in this video anyway, and we've got Jirk, I don't know, J-I-R-K, Jirk maybe, against Voracek. This is a Czech, CZE, Czech tournament, I think, in 2001. Okay, and the resignation comes on move 11. So let's have a look. E4, knight to F6, E5, knight to D5. Nobody's played knight G8, spoil sports. D4, D6, C4, knight to B6, pawn takes. Remember all this because this is book theory and it's good to know. Knight to C3. And in this game, what have we seen? We've seen various things. In this game, we get G6. So black's going to try to bring the bishop out this way. Let's just turn the lines off as well. So white carries on developing, bishop to E3, bishop to G7 from black, rook to C1, I guess is some kind of preparation of the pawn being moved forward. Castles from black, excuse me. B3, I guess that defends this square, but I wonder if it sort of gives this bishop a bit too much scope. But I mean, you know, I'm being too deep. I'm thinking too much about it here. Let's just get on with the game. Bishop to F5 and D5. Okay, so maybe white didn't want the pawn there. Maybe that's why he's moved the pawn. Anyway, and now the positions. Okay, look, plus 0.00. I was going to say plus 0.17, plus 0.05. It's basically dead level. Except it isn't, because black now misses a trick. Black plays knight 8 to D7. Very natural developing move, except there's a problem because the bar's just leapt up to +3. And what's the move here? If you want to press pause and just work out what the move is for white that is so strong that wins piece, feel free to hit pause. Otherwise, in 3, 2, 1, and the move is G4. The pawn is supported by the queen and attacks the bishop, and the bishop has nowhere to go. No, 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 no. None of those squares are safe. And so not good. If I just go back a couple of moves, though, in this position, black needs to play, it's saying e6. Why is e6, g4 not just as bad? It really likes e6. Why is e6? What happens after g4? Oh, you can play g4. Okay. So g4, this time you have the intermezzo move. So check there. And now the bishop can escape to this square. And all sorts of complications. Wow, this is messy. Okay, let's look, because this is quite interesting. Probably worth remembering this if you're going to play against this. Takes, actually sacrificing the bishop. Takes, knight takes, and now we're forking the rook and the bishop. And it's all very confusing. What happens if you try to keep the rook? So let's say rook to d3. Oh, I see what's coming here. Knight takes, rook takes, queen h4 check. And yeah, this is just chaos. The computer says this is almost dead level, but look at the material in this game. You've got two rooks which match up, a knight which matches up. So you've got white's got an extra bishop, but black's got two pawns, and the white king is going to be displaced. So wow, interesting stuff. Anyway, that's our first 4 games in Alekhine's Defence. And as usual, I will be back soon with the next 4. Thanks for watching.